Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, publisher and editor of Native News Online. 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled that affirmative action is illegal, and they basically struck it down. And has implications for Indian country. And really, to delve more into it, we have a very special guest today, Dr. Cheryl Crazy Bull from the American Indian College Fund, based out in Denver. And welcome, Dr. Crazy Bull. How are you today?
I'm great, and thank you for having me.
Hey, you are welcome, and we really hope to get enlightened here. Tell us, what's your reaction? I know that the College Fund put something out on your blog, and then we republished it on Native News Online. But what was your stance? What was your reaction when you first found out about the Supreme Court ruling?
Yeah, so my reaction, and I believe that of my colleagues who work in Native higher education, we were pretty disheartened by it. And I realized when I wanted to do something, I felt angry. And the anger, I think, came from the ruling kind of being rooted in this sense that the United States is colorblind.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, as Indigenous people and in relationship with other people of color, that that is simply not true. And in order for us to have an equitable experience in the United States, then we need to have systemic supports that give us that. And so in the higher education space, that was pretty disappointing to us.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say the impact will be on Native students across the country?
Yeah, so I think we're not really sure yet the impact. The one of the things that the case and the aftermath of the case kind of made many of us who are in Native higher education realize is that there's not a lot of information about the impact of race-conscious admissions on American Indian Alaska Native students. We know that higher education institutions beyond not talking about the tribal colleges and universities, but other higher education institutions make efforts to recruit Native students if that could be one of their priorities. And but whether they're doing that, with the intention of having a certain percent of students, or they're making exceptions in their admissions criteria, we're not really certain about that. So that's an area that needs more attention. We believe that Native students already don't feel like they belong in higher education. So the public relations part of this, the sense that the American public doesn't welcome or support your diverse experience that you're going to bring, we think will discourage students who already are challenged, that it will discourage them. There's already declining enrollment outside of the tribal colleges and universities, and we're just worried that that's going to exacerbate that.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I know it gets a little murky for people. The Supreme Court's ruling was based on race.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I, we just know what we know about our history and how we are technically sovereign nation, part of sovereign nation. Therefore, it's more of a political entity. Can you talk about that and how that really relates in reality to what we'll say the executives of most universities, public universities, would even know about it? I'm not even sure they'd know about that, but could you talk about that, about the fact that the Supreme Court ruling was based on race?
Yeah, so that makes it one of the challenges. So you just hit it right, the nail on the head, so to speak. We recognize and know that we are citizens of sovereign nations, and that when institutions of higher education are, using race as maybe part of their admissions criteria, or then that does create that murky space for us. So we've taken the position as a scholarship organization and with the other scholarship organizations that we affirm our citizenship in tribal nations and recognize that the system is focused on a different aspect of our identity, and that we always advocate for recognition of our citizenship and who we are as institutions, but also acknowledge that that's not the experience that our young people and other students have. So we call for institutions to do both: recognize our citizenship, recognize our membership in sovereign nations, and also recognize that there are inequities that are rooted in what are race interpretations or racial understandings. So it is a balance.
It is a
for us.
balance, and what's so interesting, and I'm far from a Indian legal scholar, as they're known, but if you look back at treaties, and as I recall in my mind, it was like about 82% of all treaties signed between the United States government and tribal nations throughout history, contain provision to educate our youth, and sometimes like forever, right? And so that gets a really, really, as I said, murky. And I just don't think people always understand that. And I'm on the Native American Advisory Council at our local university here in Grand Rapids, Grand Valley State University. We're constantly educating the administrators as to, are you an affinity group? Well, we think you're an affinity group. No, we're really not. We're separate because of those treaties and our sovereign nation. Yeah, so it gets really complicated.
It does. It does. But I've been thinking a lot about this over my career, but also really more intensely in the last couple of weeks, and wanting to be in a position to be able to advocate for and make recommendations, right, for predominantly white institutions, as to being more inclusive and equitable with education. And I think that for me, there's a case to be made that the role of public higher education is to educate all citizens.
Yes.
And the way that public higher education creates the climate to educate all citizens is the way that we can increase the participation of Indigenous peoples in higher education. And I think you probably could make that argument for many of the missions of private institutions as well. So, so we'll see, and we'll be watching really closely to see how institutions take steps. I think there's a lot of a desire for those steps to be sort of advocated for or pushed by the Biden administration, but really the responsibility is local. It's at the institution. What are you going to do as an institution? You're already not serving Indigenous people well, so this is really an opportunity to examine that and to shift, how you might support Native students.
And I know we have reported in recent, I would say in the last 18 months, several states, I think Oregon and I think California, have really, some of the universities have given the tuition waiver. And we've had actually here in the state of Michigan for since 1976.
Yeah. Feels like 1776.
Yeah, but so I know that back in 95, I was running the Indian Center here in Grand Rapids, and the governor Engler at the time, tried to do away with our tuition waiver. Boy, we fought him hard, and we won. And we had rallies on the steps of this Capitol, the whole deal. And I guess I'm an old protester, but advocate. Yeah. And but no, I think that. Do you think that that some of these states will be threatened now because of this ruling with some of those initiatives, or how do you see that?
Yeah. So, I see that our experience with education as systemic. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I think there may be states where the people will be predatory about this situation and will look upon it as an opportunity to eliminate uh, resources that can be used to increase Indigenous people's education. Um, or institutions or policy organizations that are often behind a lot of these lawsuits and things like that may view that as an opportunity to do that. So I like to think that it's an opportunity for us to think of it holistically. So
Mm-hmm.
we need the K-12 curriculum. We need early childhood education access that's culturally rooted. We need the K-12 curriculum. We need Native teachers. We need to legislate those kinds of things like you're talking about, the tuition supports or the waivers and things like that. And I think that we need to treat all of this as, let's all get together and let's really keep our focus on these systemic issues that are
Mm-hmm.
affecting our communities, so that we can ensure uh, our right as citizens, as U.S. citizens, to have that public education experience that really, frankly, the United States has set up as us all being entitled to,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I like to think of it as a real systemic challenge. I do think we don't know. I think I saw recently that the party that was behind the Supreme Court case has made some public statements that things like race conscious scholarships are going to have to be eliminated.
Oh.
And so there's no, evidence yet that is the outcome of the affirmative action case. Um, One of our staff members, Dina Horwedel, did a presentation to our team that looked at the impact of these decisions at a statewide level prior to the Supreme Court ruling. And the evidence actually shows that Black and Latinx students' enrollment declines in higher education when these kinds of legislative actions occur, or like in California, the proposition that removed affirmative
Mm-hmm.
action. So we already know the potential outcome based on prior data. So I think it would be really valuable for us to think of this systemically and think about that pathway. And of course, being a tribal college person, I'm hoping and really invite students to look to the tribal colleges and universities, or tribes to look to their own institutions, creating their own or partnering with tribal colleges and universities, because that you're not going to get admitted. That doesn't happen there.
Mm-hmm.
You
Now
know.
you mentioned that, and just for our viewers who are non-native, because we get actually quite a few, which we're
Yeah.
very happy with, and we feel like part of our role as news publication and kind of communication people is to get that word out, but educate our non-native people, maybe even native people, how many tribal universities and colleges there are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So so that's a little bit of a complex question. So I'll answer it in the American Indian Higher Education Consortium is a membership association of tribal colleges and universities. They currently have 35
Okay.
full members, which are 35 accredited higher education institutions. Um, I think 29 of those institutions are chartered by tribes, and then the
Mm.
others have different charters, or two of them are run by the Bureau of Indian Education. And then there are what AHEC calls developing members, and they have two. But across the country, There are a number of tribal colleges and universities that are not members of AHEC, and they are mostly emerging kinds of what I would call emerging institutions. I think, for example, the Pawnee Nation has a tribal college that is affiliated with Nebraska Indian Community College, for example. Many people don't know, but Sinte Gleska University on the Rosewood Reservation in South Dakota has had a long relationship with Lower Brule Community College and Ehanktawa
Oh, really? I
College.
know that.
Yeah, so they're affiliate institutions, which means the degree programs are like in Pawnee Nation College's case, those are Nebraska Indian Community College degrees. They certify the teachers, but Pawnee Nation College runs this little college. And so there are a number of those across the country as well. And I think we'll see them, grow and blossom. And I hope other tribes will also step in and either through an affiliation or through an eventual path to independence, create their own.
Great. Now, you mentioned the curriculum and ensuring that Native Americans are included, and we know that there's a force out there, who are anti-woke, and I don't even know if I like that term, quite frankly.
Right.
But it seems like we just have a lot of work to do at so many different levels, and nationally, locally, and especially because so much of education is done locally. So,
right.
Especially with the curriculum and school systems and that. And what's your advice to Native people who really want to be champions of education and say, hey, we have got to make sure our children are educated and even adults go back. So, what's your advice about this? This anti-woke movement that's out there in the United States.
Get registered and vote.
I love it.
Yeah, get registered and vote. And I do think media organizations like yours are a good place for people to learn about issues. But that is what we have to do. We have to vote for school boards. We have to vote for county commissioners. We have to vote for the state legislators. So if you look at a lot of the recent laws that have been passed at the state level to, limit access to knowledge, that comes from legislative decisions, right? Or the governor that you vote for. But
Correct.
Your school board, there's a lot of, many people are aware there's a lot out there on book banning. I happen to be a person who believes that you should be able to access any book you want, and that you as a parent support with your child, if you have young children, what's appropriate for them. I don't think that I get to tell you what's appropriate for your child. And but who makes that decision? School boards make that decision. And so we have to recognize that we're empowering people who may not be representing our views. And so I do think getting registered and voting, and I always tell people also it's bigger than that, because how Congress allocates resources, they're allocating our tax money. They're allocating the money I pay in to whatever priorities they think their constituents have given to them. So I always tell people at home, we depend on like SNAP benefits or low income energy assistance for our relatives to be able to have the resources that they need to take care of themselves and their family. Where do they think that comes from? It comes from people in Congress making decisions. So we have to register and vote.
Yeah, I love that answer, because even these Supreme Court rulings, that's what we initially started talking about, based on who is the president of the United States, who recommends
Absolutely
to be on the Supreme Court, and it's just seems to be so imbalanced. We are very grateful for the 7-2 vote in support of the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Oh, absolutely.
But beyond that, all the other Native American cases lost this term of the Supreme Court, and then if you include the affirmative action in there too, I love what you said, Dr. Crazy Bull, about registering to vote, and in so many of our states that are we have a larger population of Native Americans, it can really make a difference. I mean, Wisconsin is one that comes to my mind.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I would argue Joe Biden is president of the United States because of some of the Native votes up there in Menominee County.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And yeah, but I think though at all levels, I think about the public schools that are located on Indian reservations, and the decisions that are made at that level, but not just the Indian reservation ones, but just the general public should register and vote.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and you mentioned that, publications such as ours are good means to get the word out. You'd be surprised how many emails we get, or even when I meet people publicly that will walk up to me or write me an email and say, why didn't I learn this in public education?
Right.
And you know what? I basically give them what you say. Well, you need to talk to your local school board. Because in so many cases, people still live where they grew up, and just go see. Might be the same old guy that's been on there for the last 25 years making those bad decisions. So
and I think today there are a lot of Native nonprofits, including the College Fund, where you can access a lot of information on our websites. I think many of our Native nonprofits, like us, have special attention that we give to educating the public. So I do think, if you look at the different Native organizations across the country, Illuminative, First Nations Development Institution, Native American Rights Fund, Association of American Indian Affairs, there's a whole bunch of them. If you look at those as both as a Native person, but as a member of the general public, you can find really accessible information. You don't have to read a big academic book.
No.
You can go there and you can learn a lot about Native people and their issues. So I think that's also a very positive thing for people to do, is to use the resources from our organizations, from the media, and then from our Native nonprofits to learn.
And that's, yes, and sir, I'll speak for Native News Online as the publisher. That's what we're all about, is ensuring that the right information. And sometimes we have to go back through and do what we call explainer paragraphs, that the non-Native really gets it. And so often some of us among ourselves, and I don't care what group you're in, or families even, sometimes we know what we know, but we don't know what they don't know. And so I think that really is incumbent on us to help educate. And as we all know, it's a lifelong process, because this is going to go on for a long, long time. But Dr. Crazy Bull, I just want to say, Chimigwich, thank you very much for coming on today. And I know that you guys do fantastic work. We're very supportive of what the American Indian College Fund is all about. And we get your press releases. We try to run into all those many stories we can from you, because we just really applaud what you're doing. So keep up the great work. And I know you're a champion for education for everybody, but particularly Native Americans. So Chimigwich to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and you take good care of yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Native Bidaské. We will be back next week, Friday, 12 noon Eastern time, with another edition of Those Making News and Leading Change in Indian Country. Chimigwich, have a safe summer.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chimigwech.